All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. For this conversation, which is going to be at least a two-part interview, I'm joined by somebody I just recently reconnected with after a couple decades. So I'm really psyched that he agreed to come on and share some history with me. It's my pleasure to welcome BT. Hey man, great to see you. How's it going?
All right. All right. Everything's good.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so as you know, I've been doing these videos on my YouTube channel talking to various people from what I would call the old school in New Jersey, 80s into 90s. And I wanted to talk to you about your history with a couple of real critical bands in the history of New Jersey punk. The first being The Burnt, which is what we'll
Mhm.
talk about for this video. And then we're going to loop around in a few days and talk about The Wretched Ones, which is
Sure.
a legendary band, a band that I grew up listening to, and a lot of people watching this still know and love. But to kind of set the table, let's go way, way back, man, because I first heard about you in the late 80s, probably through the first Wretched Ones EP, but
Yeah.
obviously you had a history prior to that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
when and how did music first kind of take hold of you? And specifically, when did you start playing guitar?
Well, I was playing guitar probably mid 70s, trying to play Leonard Skinner and Pink Floyd and all the, classic rock bands and stuff. And it was real difficult. But then the Ramones came along and Ramones, I got it right away. And I says, well, this is where I belong. You know, if I could play Ramones tunes, then I'll learn guitar through that portal. And I started playing, and I met Armin. Was working in I was working in Bamberger's at the time as a stock guy, and so was Armin at the time. And he was a stock guy. I was a stock guy. He was telling me that his father had a guitar. I says, well, why don't you pick it up and play? And he goes, and I says, here, let me show you some fingering chords, and you'll. And he loved the Ramones, so I showed him a couple Ramones songs, and he came back the next day, and he was like, I could play this. It's so easy. I'm like, there you go. I says, get a bass, and we'll start a band. So that's how the Burnt kind of started, and he had neighborhood guys that were not musicians, but like the class clown of his high school class became the singer, and the guy around the corner became the drummer. And we just would jam in the basement, and stuff started working out and sounding good. And a lot of other people would come over and see us in the basement playing. And eventually we started getting gigs, and that's pretty much the beginning of how everything started.
Now, when was that? Was that around 83?
No, that was like 70, maybe 78, 77, 70, late
Wow.
77, early 78, maybe. Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea you guys were playing that early on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, playing out maybe a year or two later, we played out. Our first gig was at Nativity Church in Midland Park. It was like a Sunday afternoon. The church let us play on their stage in the church, and all the neighborhood kids came out to see us. And, that was interesting. We were actually a five-piece. We had another guitar player in the band back then, Ross Brower. And yeah, so we were a five-piece. And then different drummer. It wasn't Steve that was playing drums. It was another guy, Glenn, from around the corner, that lived around the corner. And Steve, the second drummer, he was like, well, Glenn started not showing up for rehearsals, and then Steve was another guy, again, a local friend, high school mate of all the other guys. I was the only outsider. I was from Garfield. Those guys were from Midland Park. Everybody else. So this drummer Steve, well, he wasn't a drummer. He just showed up one day. He was a beer drinker, drinking tons of beer, got behind a drum set and started playing our songs better than the original guy. So we're like, you want to be the drummer in the band? Because the other guy's not showing up. So he became the drummer. And then we were a five-piece with him. And then Ross, I think the other guitar player, he found a girlfriend and started not showing up and spending more time with the girlfriend. So he pretty much left the band, just faded out like sort of slowly. And we were a steady four piece for the longest time. Then probably early '80s, we just turned back into a four piece. And I started getting better on guitar, and everybody started getting better on their instruments. Armin was getting better on bass, and he was actually doing some lead singing himself. If the singer had to work something, sometimes Armin would sing a lot of the songs, and so it would be a three piece for every now and then at rehearsals, not playing out. Playing out, we were always at least a four piece. But that was the early years of that. And I think it went till we turned into the Wretched Ones, and probably the end of the '80s. 1990, I think 89, we became the Wretched Ones, late '89.
Mhm.
I think December of '89, I think, was the first show of the Wretched Ones played at the Rat Trap Cafe in Halden. And that was pretty much, August was the end of the Burnt. The singer and the drummer were just fading out and losing interest and stuff. And the band kind of automatically folded, and then me and Armin decided later on, we joined the Wretched as me, the drummer, and Armin joined the Wretched because Ed from the Wretched, he wound up firing his whole band, and we needed something to do, so we wound up joining his band as the Wretched. And then one day I said, got to change the name a little bit because there's only one original Wretched member, and we changed it to Wretched Ones. And that's stayed that way for the longest time. We're a five piece in that. Before Ed moved to California for like a year, so we were a four piece. I was struggling as a four piece playing guitar because there was a lot of two guitar parts in the songs, but it made it work. Then Ed came back, and he came back after we wrote a whole nother batch of songs, and he had a tough time rejoining the fold, and he quit. He quit soon after, not too much later, and I think moved down to shore or something. So he was further away, but he was having trouble with all the new songs a little bit, and kind of again lost interest because it was kind of for him a whole new. We advanced so much in like a year that it was tough for him to jump back into it. But he was doing good in the beginning. But again, it gets tiresome, I guess, and he quit, and we went on as a four piece for the longest time. After that's the way it kind of ran, for years
Mm.
as
Now,
a four piece.
going back to the Burnt, particularly like in the
Yeah.
late '70s when you guys were first getting out there,
Mhm.
you mentioned the church. I mean, what were some other venues you guys were hitting in those days as far as
Oh,
clubs?
the second gig was at Harley's Irish Bar in Hackensack, and that was the second show. Maybe a month or two after the church, kind of in the winter. We had a line going around the block by that time because people in town, the buzz was out. The Midland Park's got some new hot band, I guess, I don't know. But all the townspeople came out, and so there was a line going down the street, like probably 3 blocks down the street, to get in the bar. And it was a small Irish bar. And there was a guy that got us in there that I was going to school with, because I went to tech school. And in tech school, this one guy, he was like, he played acoustic guitar. He had a bass player and a drummer. And he was a regular there. He was the house band, and he says, "Oh, you got a band? Let me try and get you into the place that we play at." So it was Harley's in Hackensack, and we had a line down the street. The owner but at that time, again, it was late '70s, and the people there did not know what punk rock was. Only in New York City, Jersey was all Southern rock and everything, and so we go in the place. And did our set, and the waitresses, the owner was in complete shock what we were playing. They were not ready for that type of music in the bar. Everybody hated it, except of course the town people that came out. Drank the place dry. The owner had to go out and find beer at another bar, get some more cases of beer to bring back. So all the people he definitely made money that night, drank the place dry. That was the first place we did that at, second gig. So we have a beer drinking following, obviously.
Now, you guys were
So
doing originals from the beginning, or were you guys doing covers in those days?
no, it was all originals. It was all originals. We may have had one or two covers maybe in there. I can't even remember what it might have been, but maybe even not. I don't know. I know at rehearsal sometimes we would try some UK sub stuff or Pretenders maybe or something. We would just horse around with something that all of a sudden it just fell in our lap, the chord changes and stuff, and we wound up oh yeah that's that song, and some Sham 69 or something like that, or a Ramones song or something, mess around with that at rehearsal. And if it sounded okay and we felt confident in playing it out, maybe we played it out one or two times or something like that. But the idea, I mean, Armin's perspective of anything is if you're going to play out live, why waste any of your set time on covers? If you have your own original music, play your own original music. Don't be wasting the set on covers, whether you could do them better, whether you could do them, shittier, I don't know, but whatever way, he was always, play your music, and that's it. So we stopped doing any covers later on and stuff. It was very, somebody would have to request us playing something, or I don't know, maybe if we did it, I can't even remember. Again,
So
years have gone by.
now it took a couple of years then before the Burns started putting out records, right? Because I think the
Oh
first
yeah,
record was 83, is that right? Or am
yeah,
I?
maybe around there. Yeah, Mother Records, I think, put out the first record from Down the Shore. We did well. We started doing well and were accepted, a lot at the Brighton Bar. The people at the Brighton Bar, the Shore people were not really too friendly or happy. What I think some of the people from North Jersey, some of the bands from North Jersey and stuff. I mean, through the grapevine, I heard AOD really kind of really burned them down there or something when they first played down there and stuff. So I don't, again, I'm not, this is just, secondhand, hearing it secondhand and stuff. But we were down there and, we became friends with a lot of people down there, hung out after the show with them, didn't blow anybody off or piss anybody off. So they accepted us down there, and we grew a good Shore following after playing down at Brighton Bar. Was like a home base for the Shore for us. Even when the Burnt played there originally too. We got in we actually there was an article in, I think, Sound and Music magazine. We were featured in there, as one of the Shore bands.
Hmm.
They put pictures in the magazine and everything of us. So the Burnt has, it's logged that we played, actually were playing the Brighton Bar that early on, like 83. I think it was 83. Yeah, I think it was Sound and Music magazine.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. Wow.
was a tech magazine, and it was I forget the name of the article, something like music at the Shore or something like that. And it was an article about how punk rock was starting to infiltrate the Shore, and the Bruce Springsteen sound was dying at the Shore. Well,
That's interesting. Was Jacko booking shows that early
yeah,
on there? Yeah.
that early on was Jacko. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've known him all the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah. Great guy. Great guy.
Yeah,
A lot of
absolutely.
fun with him. So the Burnt did a couple of, you guys did a single, an EP, and a full-length album on Mother Records.
Yeah, yeah, yep. That's what we did.
So you had, a fair amount of activity in the years you guys were together. And I know eventually the Burnt, I would imagine, well, actually, no, the first, was it the first Headache release, a Burnt record, or one of the early ones at least?
It was early. It was still on Headache. Mother was definitely one of the first though. I forget what order the stuff went in. That I think Mother was the first thing we put out. Actually, Headache became a little bit later because I think Armin developed the label a little later on. I don't think it was immediately that he thought he was going to run a record label.
Right.
Um,
So no,
yeah,
there's
everything came really like slowly. We weren't that ambitious to get stuff done that quick. We weren't a band. We were just a bunch of beer drinkers that happened to have guitars in our hands. It's more that's the what we were pretty much all about. It's like, well, hey, let's all hang out tonight and drink beer. Oh, wait a minute, there's a guitar over there. Let's pick it up and see what we could do while we're in between sips and stuff. It's kind of the way everything usually rolled in the early years, and even later on too. We had right from day one, there was a refrigerator in the basement where we rehearsed, and you open a refrigerator door, the only thing that was in there was fully jammed with beer, Budweiser, Schaefer, what anybody else brought over, it was in that refrigerator, and that's all that was ever in there was beer. From start to finish until we moved out of the rehearsal room and started going to rehearsal spaces to rehearse.
mm, mm,
We almost didn't need to rehearse after a while. I mean, we always did the burnt in that room and the Wretched Ones early on too, but eventually later on, I think Armin's father lived upstairs in the house, and he was like, well, I don't want to disturb my father anymore. He's had enough of this nonsense for so many years. Let's give him a break and start rehearsing away from home, but the basement studio, went through a lot of transformations with speakers, soundproofing, you name it. We did everything down there. Did a lot of all the recordings were done down there, except I think the last Wretched Ones album was done at the Clear Cut, but everything else was done down there next to the washing machine and dryer. All the shit was set up. We ran the snake through the wall into the rehearsal room, and just did our pieces, and our monitors were the PA system to play stuff back on. We hardly used headphones. We used to just play it back over the PA and play to the PA system and record it back onto the tracks, on 8-track. Everything was on 8-track, reel to reel.
hmm.
So we did a lot of recordings that way. And all the other bands that we did too, we used to bring them in and do them the same way we did our recordings. We didn't cut anybody any how can I say, we didn't shortcut anybody on any recordings. We did the best we could, for having an 8-track system, and like Harry Baggs from Headwound, the guitar player in Headwound. He was in a band during the burnt years. Early on, he was in a band called Mechanical Bride.
Right.
And Mechanical Bride came down there, and I recorded them, and they were like the Byrds, a little bit like the punk version of the Byrds. And they playing clean 12-string guitars and acoustic guitars. And I'm recording this going like, I could actually mix this because there's no distortion or anything. It's like it's crystal clear. And I can get a great recording out of this. And it kind of opened my eyes up to being a better, I guess, recording engineer or something. I don't know. I started learning a lot of things from doing a different type of recording, a different type of band than just a band that's, balls to the wall distortion, like us and like everybody else that would come down there. And it was hard to mix because so much distortion and cross chatter and everything. And when you record a clean band, it's like night and day. The difference is so different. You learn so much.
Well, it's funny you mention that because I always really loved the sound of the Headache bands that you recorded, especially the Wretched
Yeah.
Ones. I always thought you had a really great drum sound, for example. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously Mike's a phenomenal player, which helps too, but the
Right, yeah.
drums always sounded really, really crisp on those records. So to
Mm-hmm.
know how it was recorded is kind of mind-blowing because those records still sound great.
Well, a lot of the mindset was when and Norman, brought this up too, is we would go see bands like Mental Decay and whoever, the Blanks, Niblick, Henbane, anybody. So if they came down by us, the idea of making a record for them or any kind of recording was to make them sound like they sound live. In other words, we wanted it as natural as possible. We didn't want to overproduce anything. We wanted to get a nice, clear recording of everything, and try and capture them as what they would sound like live. All that's missing basically on a record is crowd noise or anything like that. But we're trying to we always tried to capture everybody the way they were supposed to sound like. There was a band, the guy, one of the Ed's cousins, that left. He was the bass player singer in the Wretched before we joined. He split and he joined the band. He started a band called Mallory Square, and he went to an outside recording studio, and they had distorted guitars and stuff, and the guy in the recording studio cleaned everything up. And it was like, no, this is not what we're supposed to sound like. But that's what they released, because they just went to a studio, and the recording engineer knew nothing of what they're supposed to sound like because he never went to any of their shows. And he just took the recording and just cleaned everything up on it to the point that this is not even a punk band anymore, So he kind of destroyed everything. So our vision was always, go out and see what the band sounds like and try, if they're going to record them, we're going to record them like what they sound like live, their amps, we try and use their amps or their foot pedals or whatever equipment they have, try and use their equipment so it kind of captures them, maybe not the bass amp, but the guitar stuff. Yeah, you got to use your guitars, you got to use your amps and foot pedals and whatever. So try to make the recording sound as good as they sound live. And where you could hear everything too. Good stereo separation, I used to just record. We used to record just left and right. Basically, drums were recorded left and right all the time. They were just channel 1 and channel 2, I think, or something like that. And then the bass was on channel 8. And it was the same way every time. And then everything that was in between was for vocals and guitars. We'd have we'd have 2 drum tracks left and right, but I'd have about 9 drum mics, but stereo separated to give you a good stereo mix. And they would go to 2 tracks on the 8-track recorder. The bass would go on another track. So that's 3 that were always the same all the time. And then the other 5 tracks would be vocals or guitars. You would have one vocal backing vocals, and then the rest are guitars. Or one vocal and everything guitars on there. We used up all 8 tracks all the time, no matter what. I'd have buried guitars on there and stuff. One time I went in, I think I put a clean Fender Strat underneath my distorted Les Paul going through a Marshall, so there was all kind of weird recording tricks I would try and stuff, and for an 8-track mix, a lot of people would go like, damn good mix going on there for 8 tracks, They would think I'd done it on 16 or more, and I said, no, it's only 8, and a lot of it done live, We would do the drum, pretty much the drums, guitar, and bass, rhythm, all rhythm, no lead guitar or singing. First time around, all together. So that's another trick to making it sound natural, is don't do everybody individual. Do like 3 people at the same time, and everything sounds synced in a lot better. It syncs up a lot better than somebody trying to listen to somebody else through headphones and play to them, as opposed to all 3 people playing live and just isolate you. We used to have 4x8 sheets of Homosote we used to put between us to isolate the microphones, and they'd keep us separated. But we're all in the same room, 3 guys playing instruments, all live. That's it. So like the first time through went live, drums, bass, and rhythm guitar, I guess you could say, no lead guitar. And then later on, I'd put the second guitar on with lead or whatever. That was our method for our band. Other bands had other different ways they would do it, just examine them and see how it would work, to get them to sound as good and, synced up the same way. Sometimes they would do the whole thing, the singing just completely live, but the mic's all isolated where I have separate tracks and control of everything. So we do it that way. Everybody was a little different, but
Yeah. Well, for anyone who's watching this who's kind of new to the burnt, just to kind of get my chronology correct. So when you were recording stuff and putting it out on Mother Records, it was the Charlie Brown single, the MP EP, which is Midland Park
right,
EP, I would imagine.
that was, yeah, that was the
And
first one, I think.
oh, that was the first one. Okay. And then there was the full-length album, which is called Where's My Head? Uh,
Hmm.
and then you did a single as the burnt on Headache, right? Social
Yeah,
Disease. That was a Headache record.
right, right. Well, the MPEP was done actually. I think we recorded that. It might have been on 4 track. We had real early on, like crappy recording equipment, and we moved to 8 track early on. I started buying Tascam stuff. We had TAC 4 track stuff done with a live mixer, and that MPEP one I think was done on stuff like real early recording equipment. And I had brought it to Sam Ash where I was working, where they had better recording equipment because we had a functional studio in there for a while that I had built. And I had the store manager, which if you look at the MPEP, it says hardcore Barry Horowitz on there. Produced it, and he was the one that mixed it in the store. He mixed the record for us and then gave it back to us, and we sent it out to get it pressed. And that because early on we really didn't have good recording equipment. I started getting into it because I had a few extra bucks and stuff, and I says, we could do a lot of this stuff on our own. We don't need to go out and use other people. If we do it on our own, we got all the time in the world to get it right. And over the years, I started. I was getting discounts at the store on equipment, so that helped. And whenever I had some spare cash, it was like, yeah, let's buy a mixer. Let's buy this. Let's buy another compressor, another graphic equalizer equipment. I was a gear hound. Now, to be honest with you, it was like a sickness with me buying stuff. My garage is loaded now with stuff. It's I can't even move in there. There's so much equipment because I had to bring all the studio stuff home, and I still have a lot of that stuff here. And now I look, all these guys do it on computer, and all this rack mount gear and stuff, compressors and equalizers and stuff. Now they're all plugins on your computer now. All you need to do is sit down with a laptop, and it avoids all of this equipment. I have all this old stuff that's taking up space and collecting dust. So I still have a lot of it. There's some stuff I got rid of. I got rid of the mixing board, and I have new mixing boards now to take their place, and even them too, I'm loaning them out to some people, that needs equipment or something. I got Tim McMurtry always bugging me from MOD. He calls me all the time and wants to do. He wants me to. He's got a place up in Nyack. He's booking Olives, and he wants my cover band to come up there and play. So I'm probably going to do that soon.
Cool, cool. So who were some of the bands in those days, the burnt years, that you really enjoyed playing with?
Oh, I mean, let me see. It's hard. I mean, all the shore bands obviously were, I can't even remember. Well, Dirge, was one of them. Fatal Rage was what was Dirge before. Dirge was called Fatal Rage. Jacko's bands,
Right.
he was in both of them. He was the singer of both of them. Um, uh, Off the top of my head, I just almost can't remember that far back of some of the bands, but pretty much every shore band that we played with was always fun. Everybody that we played at the Pipeline with too, it's endless how many bands we played with down there, and a lot of memorable nights of crazy stuff going on and whatnot. I mean, we did one that was that stood out was I think Leeway, Biohazard, and Exploited at the Pipeline. That was the Wretched Ones. With the burnt, I don't know. That's so far back I can't remember. Like I said, I could remember Fatal Rage. Was like one of them that that really stands out from the shore. But anybody else, it's hard to remember, you know. The burnt years, especially Wretched Ones, maybe I might remember a little bit more, but the burnt was a haze at this point, you know. And remember, that's like what now? Well, past 30 years ago, more than 30 years was where the burnt was. So it's hard to remember that far back. You know, I have to look at some old posters or something and see who we may have played with back then. AOD, of course, too. You know, they've been around as long as we've been around. I think our third show was at Miles Square City with AOD, and that was AOD's first show. We played with them, and it was I forget the guy's name. He was like a Charlie Pip kind of guy, but there was another band on that bill too. But it was Miles Square City in Hoboken. That was like our third show, I think. And then the Dirt Club we were playing a lot at too. You know, that was another venue that always had the burnt play, and later years Wretched Ones played there, and Murphy's Law down the shore who played at, you know, Cafe Bar down the shore, which is gone now, and so is the Brighton Bar is leveled.
Yeah.
Nothing there. Everything's changed. Everything's changed so much. It's gone. Pipeline's gone. Aldo's is gone. Never played Aldo's. Played the Loop Lounge a couple times. That's gone. That's an apartment building now. Yeah, so a lot of history is gone. A lot of history is gone.
Well, that's why I've been doing these videos, because it's a good way to get a history up there. You know, I did a 3-part series with Emilio, as you know, just to kind of chronicle the old days and, bring back some good memories to people, because a lot of people have a lot of memories at that time period,
Well, Emilio, he had us when we started playing there as the burn. He had a small stage in a place, and he had I think Charlie Pip was the sound guy at the time from the Skulls, and he had like minimal equipment in the pipeline, and it didn't sound that good, And I said to him, "Listen, I got gear. Let me bring some of my gear down, and we'll build up a PA system in here and get this place running fine." I mean, in the end, it was up to 9,600 watts and 4 18-inch W bins under the stage. I mean, we worked down there. Me and Emilio, we worked during the day. I would go down there, and me and him would do carpentry work. We hoisted speakers to the ceiling. We stacked beer cases, like made a ladder out of beer cases, and walked the speakers to the top of the stack, like a pyramid of beer cases. Put the speakers, 185-pound speakers. Me and him carried them up, rocked it like one after the other, like this, to the top of this pyramid of beer cases. Then took chains from the ceiling, hooked the chains around the handles, and flew the speakers from the ceiling. We did that like endlessly for so many speakers. We hung from the ceiling in that place. We didn't use a lift or anything. It was done manual labor. And a stage too. We built the stage higher to put 4 18-inch W bin speakers underneath the stage. Got a 3,600 watt amp to run those 4 speakers. Another 1,200 to run the low mids, another 1,200 to run the high mids, another 400 to run the highs. It was just insane how many amps. I had a big rack of amps in the back of the place that I'm surprised we didn't blow any fuses, to run everything. But me and Emilio worked to get that club up to spec for bands to play there and touring bands to actually play too. But it was a tricky room. It was a live room, and it was like a living room. It had no acoustical properties to fix the acoustics well, so you had to play certain games. I had to use reverse reverb on vocals sometimes to get the vocals to stand out a little bit more. I had that trouble with Degeneration there, mixing for Degeneration, and I couldn't get their vocals above. The band was just too loud. And I was like, what can I do? Reverse reverb almost fixed the problem. And you couldn't tell it was a reverse reverb on the vocals, but I made it stand out, Again, there was so many tricks you had. And if a touring band came in, all it was feedback. the guy could not mix in that room because he didn't know how to handle the room with mixing what could go in the PA, what should stay out of the PA, how to place the amps on stage to get the best sound. It was a nightmare for anybody that came in on the road and had to do sound there for their own band, and sometimes the sound man would yell down at me, "Get back up here and fix this." You're like, "All right, I'll come up and help you." It was
Yeah.
that way with 9 Inch Nails there was having trouble, and I got up there and fixed it for them. Goo Goo Dolls, I did sound for Goo Goo Dolls there twice. And who else? The band sounds like AC/DC, Rhino Bucket, where
Mm.
they were excellent. They were excellent. I did sound for them there. And I said I think it was Ed Puglisi booking at the time. I said, "What'd you book an AC/DC band for here?" And he goes, "No, listen." He goes, "That's original music. They just sound like AC/DC." And I'm like, "Wow!" Nobody was there to even see them the first time they played there. You know, so and we became really good friends with them. If they played Maxwell's, they always looked me up and said, "Hey, get on a guest list. You're on a guest list. Come on down to Maxwell's since we're playing tonight." So yeah, we became friends with them guys. I mean, early on too. Um, I forget where we kind of hooked up with, but the Devil Dogs were always,
Yep.
a number one band to play with. Devil Dogs were so hot that if we played with them, we had to step it up a notch
Yeah.
every time
Oh yeah.
because they would step it up a notch and we would have to step it up another notch, and it was like they made us play so much better. The Devil Dogs, they were great guys too. They were cool to hang with and everything, party with and everything. Devil Dogs, hats off to them, man. They were one of the bands that dragged us through, to make us a better band, and even Nashville Pussy was another band that later years were Wretched Ones that we played with, was a band that, again, we always had to bring the game to the table all the time if we're playing with them guys. They were a top-notch touring band. And if you were going to play with them, you got to play them. The Humpers was another band too that we became really good friends with. Um, unbelievable bands. So over the years, we always had somebody that dragged us along and made us better every time. We always found that one band and focused on the little things that they did to become a better band, and it worked. I think it worked for us. We noticed, like with the Blanks, one time Blanks played a show and they didn't stop playing. They banged one song into the other and we're like, "Oh, that's a neat trick." We started doing that ourselves, started doing groups of 4 songs, without taking a break between the songs, because the energy level just drops. You gotta keep the crowd moving. So what you do is you make it 4 songs into one real long song, and then you can give everybody a break. So if you're doing 16 songs, there's only 3 breaks in the set. And that's it. So that's not too bad. You get a break, they get a break, and some of the songs actually work pretty well one into the other if you set your set list up properly. So that helps.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I know we got to cut this part one short at this point, but you and
Okay.
I are going to reconnect in a couple of days. We'll
Yeah,
keep
let me know.
we'll take a deep dive into the Wretched Ones for sure.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'm really excited to post this part one. I think there's a lot of people from our scene back then who are going to really love this. So until we connect again, BT,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I hope I can remember enough stuff to give you a decent interview. That's the whole thing. Like I said, it's been so many years disconnected. I've been playing a lot with the cover band, the Pickles I play in. I've been with them since '87 playing bass, and that's always the side project all the time. But that's a whole nother world. It's not the Wretched Ones burnt stuff, but again, it's something to do.
Yeah,
Keeps me moving.
excellent, man. Well, we will keep this conversation going in a few days and we'll take it
Yeah.
from there. But in the meantime, Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.